Main story tonight, Donald Trump seems to be sparking a trade war with some of America's biggest trading partners. Canada and Mexico have now been slapped with 25% import duties and China with 10%. Trump instituted the tariffs via an executive order under the guise of protecting America from the illicit flow of dangerous drugs such as fentanyl. And now joining me to discuss the potential backlash and what this looks like is TVP World Europe Editor Marcin Zaborowski.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening to you, Marcin. Thanks for joining us. Now, looking at the situation unfolding in the United States, and then of course the retaliation, I guess that's the biggest thing. What are we likely to see as far as retaliation from, especially from Canada, but also from Mexico?
We already see the retaliation. The retaliation has been announced by Canadian Prime Minister, also by the Mexican President. The Chinese are kind of more vague in their wording, but both the Mexicans and the Canadians are announcing a completely proportionate response, meaning that it will be hard, also 25% tariffs. So that means that we are at the brink of a quite considerable change to a trade relationship between the United States and its closest neighbors and allies.
Mm-hmm. So tit for tat basically measures. When we look at Canada, obviously, I mean, it's not only an important trading partner for the United States, but also a good friend and ally. They're the northern neighbor. How is this likely to affect the broader relationship, and especially when we look at Trump still insisting that Canada become the 51st state?
Well, yes, I mean, Trump's words towards Canada are, to say the least, slightly disrespectful, right? I mean, what he said today is that Canada is not viable as a state unless it is subsidized by the United States. So, and having a trade relationship before the tariffs was, in words of Trump, a kind of a subsidy. Yes, I mean, we are looking to some kind of a major realignment here, if these tariffs are to go ahead, because there is still an if here. There is still some people are hoping that he is just being bombastic here, and that's a tactic to extract concessions. But if they do go ahead, then there will be a really major realignment of the United States relationship with its very close neighbors. In case of Canada, very close ally, also in security area, in strategic relationship, in wartime. At the time of the, for example, response to 9/11, Canadians have been very generous. So they were in Afghanistan, they were in many other places, in Korea. It is a good ally. And I think the Canadians are really shocked at this point in time. And you could see it from press conferences of Prime Minister Trudeau and some other people in the Canadian government. They were like, why is this happening? Why us? I mean, we are the ally.
Right. This is, well, it's kind of like round two. Of course, we saw this during his first term, blowing up NAFTA agreement. Concessions. What do you think Donald Trump is looking for in terms of concessions from Canada?
Well, obviously, Donald Trump is looking to trade balance, and United States does not have a great record on trade balance with most countries in the world. Mm-hmm. It's not just Canada, Mexico, the EU, or China. It's almost any major country that the United States trades with. And he assumes that because trade balance is negative for the United States, that means that other states have been taking advantage of the United States. And reality is far more complex, as lots of other people better qualified than myself, the economists can tell you. The United States dollar is the world global reserve currency. The United States economy has been growing faster than other economies. Hence, United States has been simply buying more. And on more favorable terms, because its reserve currency is global. So that's, probably what we are seeing here is this kind of simplification of looking into the trade patterns.
Yeah, it seems that way. And if we look at the offshoring that was going on over the past few decades in the United States, much of the manufacturing capability has moved overseas. Now, presumably, Donald Trump is citing McKinsey and Company saying tariffs on imported goods can reduce competition for U.S. producers, increase demand for U.S.-made goods, and create jobs. But that's a long-term strategy,
Yes.
is it not? So is this sort of a false flag almost in support of these tariffs and what they can accomplish?
Well, I think the expectation is that long term the jobs will migrate back to the United States from China, Canada, other places, and that goods will be produced inside the U.S. boundaries as they did in the 19th century. But it's a very different era. The deglobalization that he's embarking on is costly. For example, the gas that the United States is buying from abroad. It's Canada, which is the biggest supplier of oil to and natural gas to the United States. If we have tariffs for these goods, it's not going to be 25%, but 10%. So there's going to be a different one. It still is going to mean basically increases for the transport and the gas pump for
right.
the
and energy
US
prices.
consumers.
Yeah, we have millions of barrels of oil a day that Americans rely on from Canada. So absolutely, and the other question is, will this affect inflation? Because many economists are saying that eventually this is an inflationary move, both for Canada and the United States.
Inflation is very likely to increase quite significantly. The rough estimate at this point in time that we are talking about the goods worth $1.3 trillion US. Some of these goods, such as energy, for example, they spill over to the entire economy. So things will simply become more expensive. I mean, to produce car in the United States very often means that spare parts for this car are crossing border between Mexico, United States, Canada, and then the final product is being made up in the United States on the assumption that there are no tariffs, or the tariffs are much lower than what is being announced now. So the estimation is that a car produced in the United States will be sold for $3,000 more than they have been so far. The production will be just simply far more expensive.
Well, now also the European Union is an issue. We're expecting some kind of move. Trump has alluded to that he will place tariffs on the EU. It looks like, basically, if you look at the EU trade policy, it's done by the European Commission, so probably Trump won't single out individual EU member states. But what is Europe doing to prepare for such an eventuality, and how can they negotiate or even attempt to negotiate before any tariffs or rash decisions are made?
Well, I think the Europeans will be prepared to negotiate and to talk about possible concessions. I think the Europeans will be quite happy, for example, to buy in greater numbers American energy, because although United States imports energy, it also produces a lot of energy which it can export to Europe, especially in the form of LNG. For example, Poland is one of the major buyers of the US-produced LNG. So we'll be quite happy to do that because that means that we are lowering our dependence on energy from other far less reliable sources. So that would be good. We are also, I think as Europeans, we are very open to have greater input from American tech companies here. And we are also very much open to buy more American defense equipment. Which we very much need at the time of a very unstable situation behind our eastern border. So these are just three areas which come to my mind. But overall, Europeans are open to buy more American stuff. It's just that Trump is entering the whole game with saying, I don't want any concessions. I'm just imposing tariffs, and then I will see how you react.
Yeah, it seems like that's exactly what he did when he was posed with that question in the White House just the other day. Marcin Zaborowski, our Europe editor here at TVP World, thank you very much for joining me and discussing this issue.
Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time. Good night.